Hello, I'm Dr. Deborah Bravoy with Anchored Hope Counseling. Welcome to our YouTube program, Hope Talks. We have some great content provided by our amazing counselors, and we hope that you find it helpful.
Greetings, I'm Rajhi Thompson, licensed professional counselor, here with Rebecca Henson, licensed professional counselor. Welcome to another session of Hope Talks. I spent my first 3 years as a therapist inside of a school-based program with a company, and this was the person who actually trained me, Rebecca Henson, and pretty much was there for me for my first couple of years. She is still currently a school-based therapist. I've transitioned into working inside of being an actual school counselor. And so we're just coming to you today to talk to you about some of the things that we see in the schools with a lot of our students. In particular, what we're focusing on today is screen time, social media, and just some of the things that we're sort of seeing as a result of just the propensity of phones pretty much being everywhere. So Rebecca, tell me a little bit about some of your experiences in terms of what you've seen, in particular the last couple of years with so many students just having phones and, because absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know you've seen more of it over the last couple of years,
Yeah.
because you've been school-based for quite some time. So you've seen the changes that the schools have made in terms of their policies. Once upon a time, there was no cell phones.
So I always joke that technology is going to be our demise. Students spend more time interacting on their phones, checking messages, going through, taking selfies, snapshots, communicating with peers online, and that's how they talk and interact with people, and they lose the ability to communicate face to face, and it's detrimental to the relationships, to their self-esteem, to their mood, to their behaviors, to their ability to focus and pay attention in classrooms. And forgive me for even saying it, but I always tell the kiddos that I work with, I would much rather their phones be left at home instead of coming into the classrooms, because they've got immediate access to their friends, their family members. They don't know how to calm, self-regulate their emotions. They don't know how to manage conflicts. It just stirs the pot, it goes viral in their minds, things like that. What kind of things do you see?
So I was going to speak a little bit more about what you alluded to just a second ago in terms of sort of an erosion of social skills.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you tell me a little bit more about what you mean when you say that conflict resolution, not being able to talk to people? What are you sort of saying that when you first went into the school-based program as opposed to now, just sort of the loss of things or the regression of certain social skills and things of that nature?
There's a huge misunderstanding of what people say in the context of what they're communicating in the cell phones and how they interact. They don't know, they can't tell if people are angry, if they're upset with them, if they are trying to be friends. They take foul language, and then even just the slang, like no cap or legit.
Yes.
Just trying to keep up with the terminology that they're using, because some of it doesn't even make sense.
Absolutely.
And I tell them, I was like, I'm completely ignorant of it. Educate me.
Absolutely.
Teach me what that means.
Absolutely.
And then I'm like, wait, what?
Right. Yeah. So I've had opportunity to read some of the text messages, some of the social media messages, the screenshots, etc. And so just as you mentioned, just trying to keep up with the language, etc. for us adults is challenging and taxing in and of itself. In terms of the social skills, some of the things that I'm saying, basically at this particular point in time, and I'm looking at junior high students, I'm seeing a social skills deficit, a lack of eye contact, things in terms of decibel and auditory tone, and when speaking with adults, very rarely do you get a greeting or a goodbye, thank you, etc. for some of the things that you're being asked about or asked for in terms of help and just things of that nature. So that's one of the things that I'm beginning to see a little bit more of, unfortunately. You mentioned earlier that you just wish that sometimes that the phones weren't even inside of the school. Mm-hmm. So I saw an interesting dichotomy in terms of sort of what administrators think. the administrator for my particular school, I won't say what school that is, and then the other junior high across town, I've watched the conversation between the two. My administrator is very much an advocate for having cellular phones and access to the internet right at the fingertips of the students, while the other administrator is very much sort of against that. And so I listened to both some of the pros and cons. What have you noticed in terms of some of the increased maybe disciplinary issues at your particular school? Has that been something that you've seen? Have you seen an increase? Is that something that has changed?
Several years. Well, actually, several years ago, it was a problem. Several of the office referrals, and I don't have the statistics on it. The school manages that information, but they're playing on their phones in class. They receive SDC. They might receive detention for it because they're playing on their phone instead of doing their work. And then they implemented the policy where they could play on their phone in the passing periods, or they could play on it in the cafeteria, so now they have charging stations. So we're creating a place where students have more access to the technology, and I understand its importance, but
Absolutely.
I also believe that it's equally important to give them time off of the screen because biologically their brains can't handle it.
It's interesting that you say that because I was talking to our clinical director, Dr. Brayboy, and I mentioned to her about a disorder that I just recently read up on the other day. It's not officially inside of it's not in the DSM currently at this particular point in time, but she believes that this is something that we'll probably see very soon in an upcoming updated version of the DSM, screen dependency disorder.
Okay.
And so just basically going off the name of that, is that something that you're beginning to see, maybe an increased dependence upon screen time inside of your school?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like what I know about it, it's playing on your phone and having immediate access to everything at your fingertips increases dopamine, and it's as addictive as smoking, drinking, gambling, sex, any of those things. And we take a teenager and we say, hey, have a phone, immediate access, flood your system, and then we expect them to be able to focus or to be able to regulate emotions. And I get kids that rip doors off door frames, put holes in wall, meltdowns, hospitalizations, because parents tried to take away the cell phones, and parents feel powerless because they can't manage it or they can't control it. So it's a challenge.
Absolutely, and I've seen pretty much the same things, no doors ripped off the hinges or holes being put in walls, but I literally have seen tantrums being thrown. I have had tons of parents contact me and call me in terms of what should I do, how should I deal with this situation. I wish we really had the answers at this particular point in time. One of the things that I can say is that I think that you should set some expectations once you actually give them access to the internet, and so in particular cellular phones. There should be times of the day in which they're allowed internet access, and you want to set those particular boundaries very early in terms of what your expectations are as a parent. There's a number of different apps and control methods, if you will, in terms of technology, in terms of how you can control some of the access that students have, or children have to phones. And maybe at a later time I'll talk to you guys a little bit more about that. Internet dependency disorder or internet gaming disorder, those were two of the other ones that I spoke to Dr. Brayboy about earlier this morning, and I'm beginning to see some of those. One of the issues that I've been having in terms of school with students is oftentimes irritability, very tired, not getting enough sleep at night. I'm finding out that they're playing certain video games all night long. Notice anything like that?
Oh, yeah, every day.
Yeah.
Every day. They stay up, they're talking to their friends, their parents are going in and they have their cell phones in their hands, they're falling asleep to them, they wake up to them. Teachers can't take them away when they come to school. They're falling asleep in class. They're not turning in their work because all they think about is who they have to message, what picture they have to take. And it's a problem. More depression, more loneliness. Kids feel like they're bored all the time.
Absolutely.
They can't think for themselves.
Yeah.
You know, they can't go do things because they don't have the stuff.
Yeah.
If the parents take away the phones.
Absolutely. A huge one that I wanted to talk to you about, because I'm seeing this increase just exponentially, is anxiety. In terms of social media and social media applications, some of the more popular ones, Snapchat, Facebook, have you seen an increase in anxiety because of the dependency on those particular apps, sometimes for self-validation, things of that nature.
Absolutely, yeah. No, they everything, because they are dependent on it, they need that feedback. They need to know that they're accepted, that the picture that they took was cool, or is this hairstyle okay, is this selfie okay, all kinds of things, just so they do get accepted. And if they don't get that immediate feedback, then it's devastating.
So not as many likes as you might want on a particular picture, even some ugly comments, things of that nature, kind of could leave some lasting residual issues with students.
It creates a social problem, definitely with that, because they don't know how, I guess they don't know how to, we were talking earlier about managing conflicts.
Absolutely.
It stirs the pot, like I said earlier, and it creates the conflict, because it's like, I can say whatever I want on social media because I don't have to address you face to face.
Face to face, right.
You know, it's less personal, less intimidating.
Absolutely.
So they would say things that they wouldn't normally say in person, so they'll come to me and they'll be like, oh my gosh, check out what this person said, and then we have to break it down, look at the perception, and figure out how we can navigate it.
Would you be an advocate for something such as maybe an education piece before students have access to the internet, in particular cellular phones where they have access pretty much day and night? Do you think that that's something that maybe we should, as a society as a whole, in particular as adults, maybe require or at least think about before we give our students unfettered access to these things?
Absolutely, absolutely, because of the addictive nature of it and what it does to the chemistry in the brain and how it affects them. Parents need to know. They need to know what to look for, how to set limits, how to set boundaries.
Absolutely.
It's okay to be a parent.
Absolutely.
It's okay to tell your kids no. There's other means to communicate with your kids at school.
Absolutely.
They can always use the phones. They don't have to have immediate access. Using their cell phones, text messaging, phone calls, and then maybe they'll be able to self-regulate. Maybe they'll be able to communicate with their peers better and not have as much conflict, or even have better grades.
So how long have you been in school-based?
11 years.
So 11 years, over the course of 11 years, you have seen a major change, in particular the last several years, in terms of the students having access to the internet and cell
Absolutely,
phones.
yes, and now I know schools are pushing technology, and I see its importance. You know, we function better, we function more quickly, but give you an example, when the students got their Chromebooks for the first time, I guess it was last year.
That's one-to-one Chromebooks, meaning every single student has a Chromebook and that attends the school, and they use those Chromebooks in Google Classroom most of the time for their assignments, text assignments, things of that nature. So inside of the classroom, almost every single classroom, with the exception of certain classes like PE and things of that nature, they're pulling out these Chromebooks instead of carrying around a backpack full of books now, right? Yeah.
Yes. So then at lunch, the students that aren't in the cafeteria and they want to go out into the courtyard, and there's like 20 students lined up, and all but 2 of those 20 students were playing on their Chromebooks. A couple of them were interacting with each other, they were playing games, so they were kind of talking,
right.
But everybody else was, hey, let me go play on this game, or go send this, look at this. And there were 2 students, one was drawing and one was just looking around so lonely. And it really made me sad, because I was like, we're losing the ability to connect with people, and we need it.
On a personal level, absolutely.
Yeah, we're social creatures.
So I've seen something very similar. The cafeterias at my particular school, I go in sometimes early, 7:30 in the morning, just to go and talk to my principal, because that's his place of duty. I have seen entire tables of students, 7:30 in the morning, every single person. You know, we have round tables in my cafeteria on a cell phone, nobody interacting, no conversation, no talking, things of that nature. And so when we say that we're seeing deficits in terms of social skills, we're beginning to see some things. And so do you have any suggestions? We mentioned boundaries, both myself and you a little bit earlier. Do you have any suggestions in terms of what you have seen and what works, and what you might try? If you had a younger child or a preteen and was getting ready to get a cellular phone, because before I want to say this, my son was in the 5th grade just a few years ago, and he wanted a cellular phone, and I thought that was just extremely odd, but I learned that everybody in his classroom had one of these phones, and so we're talking, 10, 11, 9-year-old kids basically already with, cellular technology. And so any suggestions in terms of what you have seen that works? I know we discussed boundaries again. Anything else?
I think parents need to be mindful of what their teens or their children are using the phones for. Know who their contacts are, know who their friends are on social media, monitor it every day, talk to them, you know, open up the door to have the conversations to say,
Absolutely.
hey, what are you doing? Who is this person? What kinds of things do you guys talk about? And do it in a calm way. You know, you don't have to be super invasive,
Right.
Because you want to respect their personal space, but when it comes to technology, they need to know. They need to know what apps they're using, why they're using those apps. So parents just need to educate themselves, and then don't be afraid to say, hey, you can have it from this time to this time. And follow through with it, be consistent.
Yeah, so you want to set standards and expectations early, very early. That's sort of the key, so that there's a level of consistency there. Maybe at another time we'll talk a little bit also in terms of safety on the internet and sort of some of the things that we're beginning to see in terms of, I'm sure you guys have heard things in terms of sex trafficking, et cetera. And so maybe at a later date we'll get an opportunity to talk to you guys about that. But thank you once again, Hope Talks, and Rajhi Thompson, Rebecca Henson. Bye.
Thank you for watching Hope Talks. We hope this information was beneficial for you. Please be sure to check out our other videos, and if you would please like the video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, we would really appreciate it. Thanks so much and have a blessed day.